All right, do this. Yeah, it's on there. Let's go.
Hey, good morning, everybody. That means you haven't hit the donuts. You will not be able to even leave this room without hitting the donuts, okay? So we get that energy flowing. We're going to get started right away. We want to be respectful of your time, and if you have questions, and I know that we have people on Zoom, and if you are on virtually and cannot hear anything we're saying, please make sure that you give us a high sign. Let us know immediately, because we want to make sure that everybody is able to hear everything that we're talking about for this hour. Is this our fourth bidders conference this year? It's an unusual year for us, right? Y'all have been with us a lot this year. Thank you. Let me say that. I'm Helen Jones Kelly. I'm the executive director here at ADAMHS, and we want to be able to give you all of the information that you're going to need for this, our final bidders conference of the year. And we will be talking specifically today about funding for calendar year 2025. If you have questions, this is the place to ask them. We will also use your questions for our frequently asked questions so that those that are either on Zoom or unable to attend today can have the full benefit of the conversation that we get to have here. So I'm just going to kick us off, and then I'll be turning it over to the experts on the team. Okay. Maybe I'm going to kick us off. There we go. I don't have to put a lot of time into telling you who we are. This sets out what our responsibilities are under the Ohio Revised Code. And it's important for all of us to frequently refresh ourselves on the information that's on this part of the slide. Even more so right now, because I think over time, we've gotten away from the real aspects of our responsibilities and thank you, our responsibilities, and believing perhaps that we're able to be an ongoing and exclusive funder of all services within the community. So it's really important for us to come back to this periodically and to basically recall, yes, we do have responsibility for planning, funding, monitoring, and convening. Convening is not here, but it can be inferred from the words that are here, and the coordination of services. But I think we've been through a year now so that we can all say that we fully understand. We certainly understand it on our side, especially after losing grants. Grants didn't just go away, they came to expiration. But we cannot be 100% of the funding for services within the community. We're required to be at that basic level, and we try to go above that as much as we can by bringing in diverse funds from other areas. But we're really going to be talking a lot this year about how we're working together to make sure that we're covering as much of the services needed within our community as possible, and identifying other partners that will have a role in that. You have here our mission. Our board updated our mission about a year ago, as well as our vision statement. And we're all a part of that. We here at ADAMHS see us all as a system of care. Without you, we're nobody, because we don't do the direct services. We count on you all for those services. So I'll start with the piece that I should be getting to from here. All right, so where does our money come from? Well, our basic source of funding is from Montgomery County's Human Services Levy. We are the unusual county in the state of Ohio because we do have a multi-system levy process. Otherwise, we would be spending all of our time as staff in levy mode. But because of the innovation that is the hallmark of this community, we have a multi-system levy process, which allows all of our mandated agencies, as well as all of our provider system, to be able to come together to seek out ways in which to fund critical services in the community. Our levy has been in place now for 40 years. However, we still do not have a complete system of funding through that process. It was never designed for that, but it is certainly a unique way in which to foster collaboration and to get to some of those critical needs we would not otherwise be able to bring in funding and programming for. We also receive funding from the state of Ohio. Most of the funds that come from the state are targeted for specific purposes. And I think this year we became even more aware of how that targeting works. We do get some flexible funds periodically, but that is not part of our regular grant process from the state of Ohio. There are certain services that are a part of the state's specific commitments to the federal government, and those dollars then flow to us. So sometimes we're getting state funding, sometimes we're getting federal funding that's passed through the state. And of course, federal funding comes in both through the state as well as some of the grants that we go after for specific purposes. You see on the very end of this, our total budget. Most of the money that comes into ADAMHS, we were very proud to say, goes out into the community. Our overhead expenses are specifically kept low, intentionally kept low, so that the money goes into the community, so that the services are met. And you see here our county alignment. There are priorities that are set both at the federal and the state level, and of course we have community priorities. We also have the advantage of being engaged with our local counties. Let's see, there are 8 of us who are involved in what we call our regional affiliate boards. We learned years ago, we used to say, oh, we can't do that. Oh, we can't do that because we only have our levy dollars, which have to go to Montgomery County clients. Well, we have a lot more dollars, as you see, that come out of other areas, the state dollars, as well as grants. People live and work across county lines. They should not be constrained for services because they happen to live in another county and happen to work maybe in Montgomery County or in Clark, Green, Madison, or in Warren, Clinton, or in Champaign, Logan, or in Preble. So we have a legally established an affiliate board. It's been in place now for about 6 years, so that we work together to look across our county lines so that there's alignment with our programs and services. And really, it should not be a matter of a zip code, whether you have access to some basic services. That's been one of the constraints across the broader human services system for so many years. We don't see that as being our call. Our call is to serve people. And we do look across the region at ways to collaborate and to fund services for the people who depend upon them. I know you all can read. You wouldn't have gotten your jobs if you couldn't, so I'm not going to read through all of these. And I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly to take us to the next piece of this information.
Good morning, everybody.
Enough donuts.
Good morning.
Not enough donuts. All right. Here we go. Okay, so I want to start by talking about our board strategic plan. And that the highlighted areas for that is crisis response, as well as housing and familiar faces. Familiar faces is our very large initiative around helping to support the most vulnerable in our community. Those individuals that are in and out of hospital systems, homeless systems, community mental health, the criminal justice system. What I do want to mention here is that our funding will focus on supporting the minimum standards as outlined in Ohio Revised Code, which is on another slide I'll show you here very shortly. Please do not apply for crisis services in this application. So I realize the crisis services listed on here. That's because we're trying to align with our board strategic plan when we look at treatment services in the community. The RFP for crisis services is still open, and it is due September 30th. By 5 p.m. So if you're still interested, the application is still available. but do not apply for crisis services in this application for funding. I also want to mention that ADAMHS Board is not looking to expand our programming beyond what is outlined. However, we are interested in receiving applications to, from providers or current providers who offer creative solutions for Montgomery County and the needs we have. So that's not to say that if you're a new provider, you have a new program, go ahead and apply. So we're not looking at expanding the dollars we're going to spend, but we are absolutely willing to look at any new innovative ideas. I also want to remind everybody, kind of piggybacking off of what Helen said, it's important to remember that funding is contingent upon what the needs are in the community as well as the resources we have. So we have, as Helen said, we've got levy, we've got state, we've got federal dollars. Funding is never a guarantee. One of the things that I do tend to see sometimes is this, it's almost like the money's just kind of been almost guaranteed for quite some time now, and that's just not the case. So we really need you guys to work on sustainability plans. So we realize that your overall budget may not be 100% ADAMHS funding, but you may have a program that's been 100% ADAMHS funded. So for that program, looking at how are you going to sustain that? We do give you all 120-day notices, and that works both ways. So we send a 120-day notice to let you know, hey, your funding's ending. And if you're deciding not to do the programming anymore, you can also send us a 120-day notice. It's hard for me to do this with the microphone because I'm so animated. So I feel kind of robotic, but this is what I was talking about with Ohio Revised Code, the continuum of care. The continuum of care mandated services is everything from prevention all the way over to those recovery supports. So those are all mandated services in Ohio Revised Code. Where the difference is the minimum standard. So the minimum standard that was added to Ohio Revised Code is really talking about opioid and co-occurring drug use. And so we are at minimum required to have these programs in our community at an absolute minimum. And at this time, I'm going to pass it over to our Clients' Rights Officer and our Housing Coordinator, Kaylin Drodge, and she's going to speak a little bit about housing.
Hi. So if you don't know me, I know there's some familiar faces. I'm Kaylin Drodge, Housing and Client Rights. So first, I'm going to touch over residential care facilities, also known as group homes. Ohio Administrative Code is cited there if you want to look it up directly. But we want to talk a little bit about the RSS program. It's totally optional. It gives a benefit of $1,800 per month, $1,600 for rent, $200 to the resident to use as they want to. This amount is based on the level of care provided. It includes supervision, personal care services, and other accommodations. So, oh, I'm so sorry. So this does not mean that your other residents that don't receive RSS are applicable to the same standard. So this is very different if you're non-RSS, if that protective level of care isn't assessed, than if someone that was assessed as protective level of care and receives RSS. Then is recovery housing. Again, Ohio Administrative Code, January 1st, 2025, all recovery homes have to be certified by a qualified organization. I know almost everyone I've spoken to is either in the process of it, but this is very crucial because if you continue to operate outside of the guidelines of recently operating, there's other little stipulations, it is considered a felony. So this is very serious. I spent quite a bit of time reaching out to other ADAMHS boards across the state, seeing how does our per diem rate compare to others? Are we doing the best we can for our community? What are other ways to pay for resident to get that support in recovery? Some of you may know that the first 30 days, they're not working. They're focusing on their program, on their plan, on staying sober. So recovery homes often need that additional support. So over my survey, I found that our per diem rate was one of the highest, but also had no stipulation on ending. If you know, Ohio Administrative Code does not allow you to kick a person out just because you think that they're all better. They have to remain there. Of course, you can have conversations with them like, hey, how can I support you on your next step? But So I'm very proud of that, that we do the best that we can with the money that we have. Our treatment providers are very familiar with this, but it's so important to have the data to support why that money is going to someone. So everyone is required to do a monthly outcome survey to support that.
Thank you, Kaylin. Okay, yay, Medicaid type services. So this was new for calendar year 24, and we're going to continue to do this for calendar year 25. So for those of you that have been a provider, a contracted provider with ADAMHS and treatment services, the Medicaid type dollars are dollars that we utilize for individuals who meet income requirements on a sliding fee scale and maybe don't have insurance yet. And so what our providers are able to do is enroll an individual in GOSH, which to me is basically just an insurance claim system, but it's kind of our version of it. It's lots of fun for those of you who have had to play around with GOSH. And so basically, we have a cost center that is allocated for everyone to utilize that money. So you don't have to put the Medicaid type dollars in your application for funding. We have $2.5 million for calendar year 25 set aside for these indigent dollars. That is based on historical use. So it kind of keeps going down to a lower rate because a lot more people have Medicaid, and our providers are doing a really great job applying people for Medicaid. So what just happened? At any rate, the other thing I want to mention here, so you don't have to put it in your budget, if you are a provider that only wants access to Medicaid type dollars, you still need to do the entire application for funding. The difference is that you're not going to have a program specific application with the budget outlining all the Medicaid dollars because you don't have to do that anymore. So it's just one cost center, but you do still need to do the application for funding process. If you are one of our contracted providers, you do have access to our Job and Family Services liaison. Her name's Natasha. She is extremely helpful when our providers are working with individuals, and they can give her a call and say, hey, what's going on here? What's the holdup? We need some additional support with getting this individual their Medicaid started. So, and she actually sends me a report every month, and I can see how all of the providers are utilizing her services and how many individuals have been able to get connected with Medicaid. So that's been a wonderful benefit, and she's very helpful. The other thing that I want to mention is that moving forward, when you enroll an individual in GOSH, you will be required with that enrollment to show that the person has applied for Medicaid. Just something to show, hey, they applied. So that's something that's a little bit different there. Oops. And most of you know this, but licensure and accreditation requirements, I'm not going to read all of these. And just so you guys know, we have an entire RFP, RFA, however you want to call it, on our website. So this information is all outlined for you. So about an hour after this meeting, Tina will have all this information posted on our website. The RFP outlines things in much greater detail, and the PowerPoints will also be posted up there as well. All right, I am going to pass it to my quality coordinator, Emma, and she's going to go over the quality requirements.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Emma Goldinger. I do quality assurance for the Treatment Supportive Services Division here. I'm here to talk to you about quality assurance and our application portal. So all ADAMHS funded providers are required to participate in quality assurance activities. Some of these activities may include quality reporting. These quality reports are outcomes that are jointly agreed upon by the agency and our team over here, myself and our other treatment staff. And we go through that process during the AFF. After the AFF, we'll have lots of conversations to make sure that our outcomes are inclusive of all the services you're providing. These reports are submitted 1 month after the reporting period, and that might be quarterly or monthly, depending on the types of services you're providing. Some other quality improvement activities are our quality performance reviews. These are kind of like our clinical audits. They're just check-ins with your agencies. They'll either be done annually or biannually, depending on your funding source and like funding level. And lastly, e-basis and perceptions of care. Sweet. Okay. So for the portal, you guys have used it if you've applied in the past. It's our EC Impact Portal. Prevention also uses the same portal. If you are an existing provider and you've already done an application with us and you have the same key staff, you'll just log in with your username and password that you used. If you're having trouble with that, there's a reset password link, and you can also email me for help. If you are an existing provider that's already filled out an application, but you've had a change in key staff, this is where it gets a little different. You're going to email me with your name, the key staff's name, your agency, the key staff's title, and their email address so that I can get them entered in the system. If you have existing key staff, you can add staff members yourself if you want other people in the application. It's just the main point of contact is the one that can do all that. So if you had a change in key staff, I'll help you there. And lastly, if you are a new provider and you have not applied for funding with us, you will go to the same EC Impact webpage, and you'll go to the bottom where it says click here to have a new request a new ADAMHS portal account. And it's super simple. You'll just press that and then go through all the instructions. You'll enter like your EIN number and all that good stuff, and you'll get set up. Some additional information about the application I want to touch upon is that applications will not be cloned for treatment. This is different for prevention. For treatment, they will not be cloned. You will need to all enter in all your information, all of your staff, your different narratives and everything. And just ensure that all of your staff contacts are up to date. I really do use those during the year. If I need to talk to your CFO or your quality insurance staff member, I use that section very frequently. So make sure that you're not putting the same person for all those unless that person really does cover all of those roles. Also make sure that your contracts and your licensures are up to date. These are attachments that will be in an attachment section. Just make sure that what you're uploading is up to date so I don't have to start emailing you. And lastly, I want to remind you guys that the portal does not keep you logged in all day. If you are inactive for 2 hours, I believe, it will sign you out, and you need to save all your work. It does not save automatically. And every page in the portal, you will scroll down to the bottom and you will press save my work. You can press save and stay there. You can press save and move on. I always do it twice because I'm weird like that. So just make sure you're saving frequently whenever you're on a page so you don't lose all your work. And lastly, make sure once you're done with your whole application, all that work you put in, you remember to press submit. There is a page on the last slide of the application where you have to submit and assure that your submission is correct. So that's all I have for the application portal. If anybody has any questions, my email is all over this PowerPoint, so you can always reach out to me, give me a call, shoot me an email. I'm here to help with you guys. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Emma. I'm almost done. I got 2 more slides, and then y'all get to hear about prevention. Okay, additional requirements, statements of DEI work. For those of you that are current providers who've participated in our quality performance reviews that Emma was mentioning, you received within your QPR some recommendations around a survey that you took around stages of change for DEI. So you can reference that when you're doing this application. If you are a new provider, we will send you the link for that survey so that you're able to join in and participate with what all the other providers are doing as well. Fiscal requirements, as outlined by our CFO, Chrissy, which she will be speaking later. Continue to work on having staff trained in motivational interviewing, expert, mental health first aid, all of those pieces. We offer all of that here all year long. Our training department does a phenomenal job. One of the new things we've implemented is proof of a client's rights officer, as well as providing your grievance procedures. So that is something that you can take like a screenshot of, or if you already have a PDF of it, you'll be able to upload that into your application for funding in the additional documents section. We also would love to see in your program narratives how you're collaborating with other community partners. We also are requesting that you provide sustainability plans within your program narrative. And one of the other new things that Chrissy will be speaking about here shortly is the 25% required match for all programs moving forward. And here is our timeline. Tomorrow, the portal will open, And the applications are due by October 11th by 5 p.m. Applications submitted after that time will not be accepted. And now I'm going to pass it to Tristan.
Standing in front of this. All right, so I'm going to try to be brief, but may not be. I do want to let you guys know we don't have copies of our request for applications today. It is quite lengthy, and when you see it, I don't want you to worry about it. Honestly, it's just because I feel like sometimes I'm an anxious person and I want to know everything about everything. So it's just loaded with information. I was trying to think of what questions I might have, what questions you guys might have. So that is why it is, I want to say it's over 40 pages, but a lot of that is just me giving you tips and examples and all of that to try to make things make sense. The PowerPoint is really just high level. And so I will say, please, please, please read the RFA when Tina posts it. So Kimberly did a wonderful job of explaining Ohio Revised Code and our continuum of care and what is mandated you'll see prevention and promotion really is half of our continuum here. But we just have this top line, prevention and wellness management services. So it leaves a lot to the imagination of how we're going to move through with that. So our team has done a really good job of outlining exactly what we're looking for and what measures we're really trying to work towards. Again, this isn't fun, but licensure and accreditation requirements for organizations. I've put it in the RFA. It's here in terms of what licensures or accreditations your organization must have in order to apply for funding. So if you do not have this or cannot show proof that OMAS is working on your application and they say you're okay, we cannot contract with agencies that do not meet these requirements. So I talked about our priorities. These are our priorities for the year. You will see that it encompasses a lot of what you guys do. So decreasing the suicide death rate, decreasing substance use, decreasing mental illness, decreasing the impact of chronic and toxic stress, decreasing violence perpetrated towards or by Montgomery County residents, decreasing problem gambling and gaming. So what I've done here, and again, just to help everyone, is we put all of our goals, we've outlined all of them, and we put data measures because we want to make sure that we're actually measuring our impact. All of those are local. We've outlined different strategies that you could use, outcomes that we're looking for, recommended programs, populations of focus that you could select backed by data, different requirements for each one. And then we also included just additional county or state supports. So coalitions, task forces, resources, just to help that you could build into your application because we really want you guys to all have very competitive applications. The next piece is school-based services and community-based services. So we are back to what I will call a semi-normal bidders conference and request for applications. So school-based services, providers you're not submitting a budget. You are going to submit a unit rate. We've worked on some of this before. And that is school-based services only. So that is K through 12. If you're working with preschoolers, you're going to do community-based. So we're looking for you to submit a unit rate. We give some options on that. And then we're going to send that out to schools. We will allocate a certain amount of funds to each school. We've provided documentation on exactly how we've broken that down and how we've made those decisions. And then the schools will select what they want. And then we will give it to you guys and say, this is based on what all of the schools want, the amount that we are able to recommend for your program. You'll build a budget off of that. So that doesn't have to be done by October 11th. And in fact, will not be done by October 11th because I need to give the schools a little bit of time to get that done. For community-based services, it's going to look exactly like it did for the 6 months. We have the scoring rubric. And then we also, we'll just be taking those out of our budget. We're not sending it out to all communities and having their city councils determine, what exactly they want. So, and I do want to mention, just because this is a component of it, for those of you that are on Zero Suicide or Protect, I did in the RFA list exactly which organizations those are so that you know whether or not you fall within that. We are accepting a partial year application because we are coming into the final year. Please note that this is still competitive, and that will fall under community-based services. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer that. I know that we've talked about that a little bit, but we want to make sure that anybody that is falling off of a grant will still have the opportunity to look for funding in the last quarter of the year. I think that's everything on that piece. Outcome reporting. This is kind of the same. We want to know how many individuals you're going to be serving, and we want to know how many locations or what locations you're going to be in. We're also this year asking providers to submit short-term outcomes, intermediate and long-term outcomes that they're projecting. Again, we put together those tables of all of that information because we've given you ideas on data points that you can pull. You don't have to. If you want to get creative, you have other things, you can certainly utilize those, but I just wanted to give you guys the information to see exactly what we're looking for. Quarterly QI reporting, we will work with you to determine what outcomes you're anticipating or outputs you're anticipating. We'll put that in our EC Impact portal, and then you will submit those quarterly. And then end of cycle reporting, we'll look at whether or not you were achieving what you had set out to achieve. Staff requirements. So all positions listed in the budget for levy or state funding must adhere to Prevention Coalition meetings. I need a minimum of 6 for each person that is even partially funded by ADAMHS. The trainings, which will be outlined in the request for application for any of you that have been with us for any amount of time, you know exactly what those trainings are. Having a credential or licensure to practice prevention services in the state of Ohio, that's state law. That's not a Tristan decision. And then meeting 50% productivity standard for anyone on the budget. We do site visits twice a year. We do ask for schedules to make sure that we're going out and monitoring fidelity, tracking prevention services. This is honestly staying the same for any of you. If you are a new provider, we will outline, it is outlined in the request for applications, and we're also happy to answer any questions, and then just monitoring reviews as well. Additional requirements. So these are new things, and their change is not always fun, but it has its purpose. So what we are looking for this year is whether or not providers are demonstrating participatory decision-making. So we want to make sure that you guys have a way to receive feedback from participants in your programs or your communities, and that they're really helping to drive some of the program decisions that you're making. I will say several of you did a really good job on the last application of discussing how you do that. So we wanted to just make sure that we're continuing to move that way. Collaboration with other organizations. For any of you that have heard me speak in the past like 2 weeks, know that I'm really looking at how we can maximize efficiencies, especially as we're working with, some reduced resources. Are there things that other organizations are doing that maybe they are not at capacity, and can we work with them to maximize efficiencies and reduce some siloed services? Sustainability plans, Kimberly had mentioned that, just looking at, if our funders don't fund us, how can you make sure that you have a plan to diversify funding and move forward with your programs? We want to make sure that those plans are in place. And then your minimum award request. So this is something I did not do a good job of in our last bidders conference. And so we had asked for minimum awards during the last bidders conference, but what had happened was some organizations put $1, that you guys would accept anything that we could give. Other organizations put the full amount that they were requesting, which is fine. If you have given us your minimum budget and you really cannot accept less, that works for me. I do want to say that should we not have enough funding to fulfill all of the application requests, and we have to look at how we're going to make some decisions. If, say, you said your minimum amount that you could accept was $100,000 and we only have $90,000 to give, and you said like you really cannot do it with less than $100,000, then we would not even recommend that to you. So please be mindful. If it really is $100,000, like be honest with us, and so that we know that. But if you're able to make something work with $50,000, and again, I outlined all of these examples in the RFA, but if you have further questions, because we want to we're not going to use that to be like, oh, they only requested $50,000. We're not going to consider this 100,000. Absolutely not. I think that's everything I have on that. Hold on before I pass this to Vic, I do want to let everyone know just kind of our timeline. I didn't put it up here, but obviously Bidders Conference is happening. The application will open. Same due date or deadline for when everything is due into the portal. That will be October 11th by 5 p.m. Please, please, please do not wait until the last minute because we cannot accept applications after that time. Our hope, and this is our hope, this is not solidified, is that community-based recommendations for community-based services will go in November to our board. And then school-based services, because we have to take them to our schools, and then we have to get back with you guys and get your budgets. You should know your recommendation before December, but we probably won't be taking those recommendations to our board until December. So I do want to give you guys that information. You should know your recommendations for school-based services towards the end of November. Right now I have November 20th. So November 20th through 25th, I guess I gave myself a little bit of wiggle room there. So I have all of that information outlined. I'm going to go ahead and pass to Vic at this point, who does QI for prevention.
All right, thank you. All right, a lot of the slides are the same as when our last application. Up on the screen is the website to our EC Impact. If you have to ask what's our organization code, you're at the wrong site. Make sure you copy this, put it in your browser, and you'll get to our EC Impact site. With prevention, again, same as we talked about last time, everything's going to be in the compliance section, all the required documentation for OMA certificates, insurance and professional liability, and any insurance, everything goes into the compliance part. This year's different. I was able to clone all the applications from 6 months, and all that data from 6 months is now transferred into this next cycle. For prevention and early intervention only. That 4 hours of doing that carryover got me an applause. That's all I gotta say. Also, anybody who put in the program cost rate before, it's also in this application too. Yes. That's 4.5 hours. This does not apply to the uploads. All those have to be put in again, but for the compliance sections, you don't have to worry about that if they're already in there. But anything, any other requirement documents that we have in before, all the uploads, they all have to be put in again. And of course, any uploaded blank documents without prior permission from an ADAMHS director will result in incomplete submission, and application will not be considered for funding. Please make sure to submit your application in the finalized page. Please make sure you resubmit your application if changes are requested from the board. It's important with the finalized page because I'm going to keep on sending those reminders. And the way the system works is if you don't finalize it, you're going to keep getting those emails. So if you don't want to get those emails from us, finalize it. And of course, the FAQ and the PowerPoint will be posted on mcims.org. It's also going to be put into EC Impact. If you have any questions, we spent a lot of time putting into those little blue circles throughout the application. And anything else prevention and early intervention wise, send them to me. And everything goes live today at noon. And I'm done.
Sorry. The uploadable information, licensures, expirations, things of that nature, did you upload if it's gonna expire within before December?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Question and then the answers online. Oh.
I know. Good morning. I'm questioning the expiration dates of previously uploaded documents for the 6-month gap.
Yes, anything with the compliance part, you don't have to re-upload. Everything's already in there. It's already taken care of. Okay. Just re-upload it there.
Okay, thank you, Vic. I am Chrissy Sanders. For anyone who does not know me, I see a lot of familiar faces, so I think all of you know me. I am the CFO for ADAMHS. So I'm going to cover some of the fiscal requirements, and these have not changed, okay? So a lot of these are in the portal already, but I want to remind everyone of these requirements. We are going to ask that you provide your UEI numbers. This is obtained from sam.gov. We also need your certificate of good standing. At the last application for funding, there was a question about when this expires. This expires 5 years after you apply. But if you go to that website, you should be able to see the expiration dates for your agency. We are also requiring insurance, and there's a plethora of different insurance that we're asking that you cover. They are listed there, and this will be included in the PowerPoint presentation that is uploaded on the website later today. Another thing that we need you that you all are familiar with is we need you to provide a recent audit, okay? We need a full audit. It needs to have, that means it needs to have the audit report with an opinion. If there's a management letter, we would like you to include that. If there's a corrective action plan, you will need to include that as well. You also know that if you receive more than $750,000 in federal funds, you are required to have a federal single audit, okay? All this fun stuff. This is not new to anybody, correct? Good. I'm not getting applause that Vic got, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm not feeling the love, but it's okay. So let's talk about a little bit what's new with this application for funding for 2025. So we are dealing with a reduced budget for 2025. Okay, I don't need the air to suck out of the room. It's going to be okay. We're going to make it through this. We have submitted the ADAMHS 2025 budget. It is currently under review. As a result of what we will be allocated from the Human Services Levy, there could be anywhere from a 6% reduction, which you really will not feel, to a 23% reduction. But the reason that this is not going to be as significant as what was experienced this last 6 months of this year is because, as you recall, the very first 6 months of the year, we did not reduce anybody's spending. We did flat spending for treatment and prevention. We had already provided funding for we did flat funding for treatment and supportive services. We had already allocated funds for prevention services. So we had to take all of the reductions that we experienced for the year, the last 6 months. Well, now that we're doing a year at a time, we are able to better plan these contracts, okay? So we appreciate how well you have all worked with us this last 6 months, but you should not expect that detrimental of a reduction for calendar year 2025. But I do need you to understand, we're not expecting to get these influx of funds we continue to be committed to securing grant funding and diversifying our funding, as well as passing those opportunities to you all, okay? Another part of what's new is not really new. It is just a reminder. So ADAMHS does support and fund positions, but they are based on the services that are rendered, credentials, and productivity. So that means if you have a staff member that is receiving ADAMHS funding and they go on vacation, or they have this PTO time or their maternity leave, we are funding services that are being provided. Please understand that, okay? Yes. Yes. Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, so Adrian asked if that individual meets their productivity for the month and they go on vacation, will we still reimburse for that person? Yes, we will. Because we are reimbursing for services rendered, credentials, productivity, okay? Okay, so Kimberly alluded to this a little bit earlier, but the other thing that is a major new point of 2025 funding is that we are requiring all of our providers who are receiving funds, not grant funds, so we're not talking about Zero Suicide or Protect or SOS, but if you're receiving funds through a traditional contract, we are asking you to meet a cash match of 25%. Some of you are already doing this, but we need you to actually come alongside us and help us to make sure that we're diversifying our funding. We have sustainability for the programs that we are funding as well. Annual budget templates will reflect this requirement, okay? So the annual budget template will have a space, which I will show you in just a second, where you're notating that cash match, as well as the monthly invoice. Why are we making y'all do this? Okay, so we keep speaking about our need to diversify funding and reduce reliance on levy funds. This match encourages you all to diversify your funding and reduce the burden on our levy, okay? Also, we talk about sustainability. So the issue is if we are 100% funding a program and there's no diversification of those funds, if our funding is reduced or removed, that program goes away, and we don't want to see that happen in our community. And I don't think you all want to see that happen as well. So this just talks a little bit about the match. And I went over this a little bit, and we have some codes and guidelines from federal code as well that you can look at. But when we're thinking about the cash match, that cash match should be for allowable expenses. So if it's not an expense that would be allowable for our funding, it shouldn't be allowed for the match funding as well. So this is a look at what that annual budget detail will appear in our application for funding process. You will see in that last column, there's that non-ADAMHS match piece, okay? And that's for the personnel and salary costs. Wherever you choose to put that match, you can notate it in those columns, those expenditure columns. We couldn't show this one page on one thing, or it would be really small. So we split up the template into 3 pages. But then also you will see on your invoice template, there is also the place where you're putting what you're requesting in ADAMHS funds, as well as the cash match. Okay, so that covers a little bit about the match. So let's talk about the contract process. So you guys will go through the application process. What is the due date? Thank you. Y'all are alive, October 11th at 5 p.m. Thank you. Okay, so we will receive that. Staff will receive that. We will review that and make recommendations to the Program and Services Committee. The Program and Services Committee will bring that recommendation forward to our full board meeting. We're hoping that will be in December, and then contracts will go out to the agencies for approval. So we talked a little bit about the requirements. These are the same requirements that most of these are the same requirements that we're asking for the application for funding. With every single contract, we're asking that you sign that OMAS assurance statement with your contract. You need a recent audit. You need all of those insurance documentations. But I want to remind you that your award and what we're able to pass off to you is contingent upon our receipt of funding, okay? And if you have any requests for changes in your contracts, that always has to go through approval from our CEO, Helen Jones Kelly, okay? And you need to copy the program director and myself. So if you have any questions, of course, we mentioned all of this will be uploaded onto our website shortly, later this afternoon. But if you have any questions, Emma's contact information is there. Vic's contact information is there as well as mine. But I also just want to thank you all for the hard work that you all have been doing. We recognize that. We're so glad that you are able to just partner along with us with sustainability. So we don't want you to think that we're not seeing all the hard work that you're doing. So from the ADAMHS team, we just want to thank you. And at this time, I just want to open it up for any questions that you may have for myself or the team.
Hi, good morning. This is Lisa Carter, South Community. Chrissy, can you explain a little bit more about the match? You know, typically we're coming to you all for funding that we do not have other sources for. And I maybe it's just me and I don't have enough coffee in me this morning, but I need some more clarification if you could, please.
Oh, yeah, you need the mic, don't you? Sorry.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for your question. Yes, and I think that is the concern, is that we have a lot of programs that are solely funded by ADAMHS. So we want to ensure that you are doing your due diligence in securing other funding to support these programs. If this is truly a concern, if your total budget is only $100,000 or something like that, then you need to be in contact with your program director and myself. But we are asking that you provide this match so that we can ensure sustainability. This is no different than what we have been asking everyone about diversifying the funding. But now we are just putting this minimum requirement to support that ask. But if you have additional concerns about your ability to meet that, we're able to take that conversation offline. Is that okay, Lisa?
Yeah, that's fine. We do a lot of diversification of funding. And as we, work through this, I may, you may reach out. But I did want that clarification. So thank you.
Yeah, and I want to add, because those of you that may have school-based services and are not going to know what your budget is, I did think that through. So what we're going to ask is that you put how much can be matched. It's going to be work on our end on the back end to figure out how we are getting that information to schools, how we're selecting which schools are getting which services. Honestly, we might tell schools first come, first serve on this. But we are requiring that of our school-based providers as well. But it's going to look a little different because you're just putting the total amount that could be. Please note, I know some of you had direct contracts with schools to provide services. That can be included in this. Any kind of state grants, federal grants that you get outside of ADAMHS that are going towards your programs can be included. Any fundraising that you do, that can all be included. It just needs to be an allowable ADAMHS expense and going directly to that program. So. Oh, okay.
I'm going to pass the mic around a room for the people in the room that have questions, and then we'll go back to the Zoom folks.
This question's for Tristan. You said preschool was in the community base, but some of the school-based programs, it's the preschools included with preschool, kindergarten, first grade is how they break it down. And so if we were providing school-based services, do we exclude preschool, pull them out, do separate ones, or what?
If they're part of, say, like a public school district, then that's fine. Leave it there. I'm talking more independent preschools, learning centers, things of that nature that we wouldn't send this information out to, who wouldn't get the allocation or get the information. So if they're part of a school district, keep them in school-based services.
Over here.
Good morning. I have a question based on where we might include the match, because I saw that you have it up under personnel. If we do include personnel in a match, are the requirements regarding the training, attending conference, attending meetings and all of those things also then applying to them because they're in the budget?
She finished with as a match.
Well, that's a great question and one that I didn't think of. So thank you for your thoughtful question. But we will discuss this and provide guidance on it, and it may be case by case. What I am going to say is some of the things, yes, we are going to have them be a requirement because we want to make sure that everybody is trained the same way. And and everyone has to have licensure or credential. That is an absolute. The other piece is in terms of some of these collaborative efforts, coalition involvement, I want everyone there so that we're all talking to each other and we're all collaborating. That is really the intention of it. It's not just, I want everyone to attend more meetings. I want you guys to be able to learn what everyone's doing. So I'm going to provide guidance, but also just stay tuned on that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sabrina, and I have a few questions. The one about the match is I'm kind of hung up on the ADAMHS allowable expenses. If the diversified funding that our program has is maybe inclusive of a region or a part of the state, is that still considered ADAMHS allowable because it's outside of Montgomery County? Like, what if we're seeking funding specifically to serve Montgomery County, et cetera?
That's a good question. Again, another one I didn't think of. You guys are really coming with good questions. What I'm going to say on that one, and Chrissy, you can tell me no, or Helen, you can tell me no, is as long as your program is, if the match is open to Montgomery County residents, I'm not going to be that strict on it, but we'll talk on a case by case basis because I feel like you're one of few that this pertains to. Okay, but I will say it does have to be, so if you're providing something in like Miami County and it's just an extension of your program, I'm going to say if it's not available to Montgomery County residents, then the answer would be no.
We'll go back to you really quick.
Sorry. Just for additional clarification about the school-based versus community-based, and it may be like a specific me to you guys question, but we serve like pre-K through 6. And I am still like unclear if we should do the school-based application or the community-based, because while we get a lot of MOUs, it's not, sometimes we pick up additional people throughout the grant cycle when we have space or when we have capacity to do so, that could be non-schools. So just that question.
You have a lot of options here. So school-based, I want you to keep in mind that these are, you're setting a unit rate. You don't know who's going to select your program. The only thing that we're really going to base that on is schools' budgets and what they select and what you say that your maximum matches for school-based. So if you're working in a pre-K that isn't part of a district, you can either split it up and you can put pre-K in community-based and the rest in school-based and allow schools to pick it. I know that that's risky, but I will say school-based services for prevention has a much larger bucket of funds than community-based. So you could do it that way. I know that that requires 2 applications. Vic did really help us out by uploading everything in. So that's an option. Your other option is you can put it all in community-based, and you set your own budget. But again, we're going to be working with a much smaller amount in that regard. So my personal opinion, not ADAMHS, is I wouldn't probably do that. I would split it up if all else fails. Or you could, if you have a pre-K that's independent, you can also include the cost that it would cost to serve that school in your unit costs as well and just make up for that. So.
I'll get to everybody. I'm just going to work my way.
I've got two questions. I'm just going to ask them right off the bat, both of them. Well, I've got more, but I'll follow up on those later. First of all, on the match, for organizations that have multiple programs, there's going to be a certain amount of dollars that we have as an agency that are unrestricted match dollars. And so for each of our applications, I feel as though it would be an oversimplification just to divide it by, let's say, 4 programs for that unrestricted pot. If schools select one program less, then that might affect my other program. And so is it possible for those unrestricted dollars to say, as an agency, we've got this number of unrestricted potential match dollars that could go to any program? And then my other piece is many of us, or probably most of us, have an enormous amount of potential match dollars that are sitting in these One Ohio grants right now. And, you know, midsummer turned into maybe later this year, we'll find out about those. And so in situations with grants where we're not even going to have any idea of what dollars we're going to get, how do you suggest that we approach that, as those would be great dollars for this match?
Whoop-de-doo. Yeah, thank you. So I just want to directly respond to Lake's question, because the 101 Ohio dollars, fortunately, were voted on for our region at the last meeting of their board of directors. So that information should be coming to you very shortly. I would anticipate that you will have full knowledge of if you got a grant and what that amount is before the due date for this process. So that's one of the things I think I can say with respect to that funding, so that you have some assurances it'll be coming in. I want to go back just for a really, really quick moment. The question you asked about expansion and services in other areas, because I don't want anyone to leave with any confusion about the Montgomery County levy funding, and that must follow Montgomery County residents. So it puts a little bit more of an onus on you as you're, looking at expansion and working with other counties, but you have to always pay attention to that. That's why I made the point about we work regionally. So if there are dollars in other areas that have been sent through for residents, there are ways to collaborate around those services, but if it's a Montgomery County levy dollar, it has to go to a Montgomery County resident. The state looks at us per capita. So the money they send down to us typically is for Montgomery County, but there's some wiggle room in that. If people are living, working, playing in this area, we have a little bit of flexibility there that we can always, I just don't want anybody to leave this room and to think that we've gotten to a level of flexibility about those levy dollars. Oh, wait. Yeah.
All right, Helen. So she was asking about their own personal dollars that they're using to match. So do they need to keep their match dollars? I said that it needs to at least be available to Montgomery County. We're having this conversation right here, right now. So if it's in, can they use their own personal match dollars to serve outside of Montgomery County as well? Okay, so that's okay. All right. All right, we're going to include that in our FAQ. So. Okay, perfect. Sorry. Oh, and then unrestricted.
I'll take that. This is new to us too. So we're trying to make it work, but that's a great question. And I think that's great that you have unrestricted dollars that you can divvy up amongst those programs. What I would suggest is when you're including the narratives for each of those programs, to put a line that would be included with each of those narratives saying, we have unrestricted funds and amounts of that will be divvied amongst the programs. And then because the template is very specific about how you're matching that, you can then divvy up that unrestricted funds accordingly. But at least we'll know that should any changes need to be made, you've already included in your narrative, we have this amount of dollars of unrestricted funds.
Go to the back of the room.
So my question is, I got a funder to support our program from July 1 through June of 2025. And it more than meets your requirement of 25%. But so how's that going to work? Because they're supporting our program. And so they saved us for the gap. Plus it'll be 6 months into the new year, but it looks like your reporting has to be monthly, but it'll be over June 30th. So is that going to work?
This is for, oh. Okay, wait, I have another microphone.
Ooh, game changer.
Okay, well, since I have it here, that's an excellent question too. So what you will need to do in that case is you're going to meet your match requirement before the end of the year. Okay, so you'll be tracking monthly your match requirements from January through June 30th. But we'll know from July through December, you've already met that match.
So I have a mic back here now. It's a little weird. It's like a cord. So we'll use this one for the crowd. Did you have a question? Great, talk right into there.
Thank you. So we have been, for a total amount of funding we're requesting, has for the past few years come through ADAMHS from 2 different sources. One of those sources, we've already submitted our application for with a total amount of this is what we're requesting. So should we also submit another one for here with the same total and let you guys split how you do it? You follow that?
I kind of do, but which programs are you talking about?
SOS.
SOS. So SOS is a grant funded program.
I understand it.
Mhm.
Okay.
So then if you're asking for.
So our total funding has been split between the levy and the grant, but it was split by the ADAMHS. So do I put a full request into both of them and let you decide that, or do I
No.
split it?
Hey, George, how are you? Good morning, everybody again. So basically what you're going to do is do the full ask for wherever you can do the full ask. SOS is not guaranteed. So it's a competitive process now. So if you put a budget in there for that, we don't even know if is going to be approved. And if it is approved, we don't know how much we're going to receive. So you're going to want to probably put the other ask in for the levy as well.
And that's what I mean, since I put the full ask in for SOS, but we don't know.
Correct.
So I'll put the full ask in for here, and between the two, hopefully you guys will decide how to split that.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Same goes for any prevention providers that pertains to.
Hello. Hello, we have a 3-year federal grant, and we were told that we need to put in for a 3-month grant application and then put in for another calendar year application.
No, so good question. That's rough.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening.
Okay.
with this.
So this is specific to our Protect and Zero Suicide sites. So for partial year application, any current Protect and Zero Suicide partners, we already have you wrote into the grant. For Protect, that means that your contract, we're still waiting on our notice of award. But that means that your contract will end September 3rd, September 29th. So all we need at this point is a budget from September 30th through December 31st. So it's just going to be a partial year application. The reason because I want everyone to know why I'm doing that. We are setting our budgets now for the entire year. So I want to make sure that I'm able to allocate any dollars that would be needed to sustain those efforts. Again, this will be a competitive process, just like all of the applications. But I want to make sure that everyone that is on these grants has the ability to sustain those efforts through the end of the year. And then we'll have another application process next fall. And then we can look at what does that program look like moving forward. So you wouldn't submit for a full year until like next year at this time.
So we're gonna submit a 3-month budget, then we don't need to submit anything for the calendar year.
Yes, so for those sites, you would only submit a 3-month budget. For zero suicide sites, you're gonna submit a 4-month budget because it's a weird fiscal year. But yeah, that's all we need at this point.
Does anybody else have any questions over here? No, you're okay. You're gonna speak right into it.
Just Chrissy, on the budget stuff. In the past, some of us agencies, I don't know if it's everybody or not, I'm just halfway through have been rectifying funds to be able to say, okay, we had a vacant position, we couldn't fill it, we haven't used what we needed. I don't know if that's a requirement. If there's so much that has to be used in the first 6 months, I know that we've gone all over the place with this. So maybe that's in the contract, but I just thought it might help to clarify.
Oh, no. One mic.
Thank you for that question. So is your question that it would be nice to have that clarification added to the contract language, or just what our practice would be?
Your expectation.
What our expectation would be. We do expect, if you are seeing significant underspending because of a vacant position, that you are in contact with Tristan and myself to say such, okay? Because if you don't need those dollars, we want to have that heads up. Okay. That will be across the board. That is another thing that even our board has just paid attention to a little bit more, trying to understand utilization of your contracts. We want to right size contracts, and we know this is not just quite right sizing, because sometimes you have those circumstances where staff leave. But if you are in communication with us, that is helpful. This is Adrian. I finally get to see you in person. How you doing?
Okay, we have the funding by the SOS, but it's competitive. So even though we have programs that are classified under that, can we put them in this application also, because we do not know if we're going to get funding?
Yes, and that was similar to George's question, and yes, you can, absolutely.
I had met with my finance team yesterday and they asked me to ask this. They had said that the indirect cost is going from 10 to 15%. So I wanted to know if that was going to be reflected in our budgets as well.
I was aware of that at the federal level, but we will provide guidance on that, but we have not changed that here at ADAMHS.
We got our mic working again. We
All
changed the
right.
batteries. Does anybody else here in the room have questions? Okay. Okie dokie.
I just had a quick question about the minimum award request. Is this when is like previous year's productivity going to be taken into consideration, like output levels? Meaning, is it minimum requests to like be as productive, meet the same kind of standards that we did in previous years? Or is it minimum requests? It's like, what is the minimum we need to serve just one person at one time in Montgomery County?
Yeah, if you're willing to take a contract that serves one person and that's gonna cost you $500, we're open to it. So yes, to your point, it's to scale, similar to how we did for a lot of the prevention contracts for the 6 months. You guys submitted these great budgets with all of these outcomes, and we said, we're gonna need to reduce that. So it will look exactly the same. We'll send it back to you, and then you would reduce as needed. Yep, good question.
Okay, we have some questions on Zoom now. Currently, there's a hold on funding for group homes in the Montgomery County area per ODJFS. Does this apply to ADAMHS treatment as well?
No, group homes get used really interchangeably. So you're discussing foster care. We're discussing residential care facilities certified by Ohio MOS.
Thank you. Lisa, I think you have a question in the chat, but I think you asked that verbally and I think you got your answer. Does the source of the funding of the match funding matter? Philanthropic, public, private, federal, non-federal, etc.
No.
Okay. Just to clarify, the quote unquote cash match expectation is on an annual basis, not monthly as services are provided.
Correct.
Okay. I think we touched on this, but I'd like to make sure. Does the match need to be confirmed or just budgeted / pending? 25% is a big number to have up front.
Can you repeat that? Okay.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Sure. Does the match need to be confirmed or just budgeted / pending? 25% is a big number to have upfront.
If you budget for it, your award would be contingent on your ability to match that. So if it's not confirmed, we wouldn't be able to fund that program. We would need a confirmation prior to, they can budget for it because they may be waiting for some funding. And October 11th, they don't know. But the award of that contract for that specific program is contingent upon their ability to provide the 25% match. And if they are specifically waiting for funding that is pending, I would suggest they make that known, make us aware of that fact as we're reviewing their application.
Am I correct in assuming that Medicaid eligible services such as peer support will not be considered for funding in 2025?
That is correct.
The question was, am I correct in assuming that Medicaid eligible services such as peer support will not be considered for funding in 2025? And Kimberly said that is correct. Okay, that's all the questions on Zoom currently.
I want to repeat one that we answered previously on Zoom for the people in the room. This is pertinent to the treatment providers. As I stated earlier, we are not cloning the applications. The question was, are we still going to have access to our old applications? Yes, all historical data is saved. You will always have access to your old applications as long as you can log into the system.
Thank you. This is related to that match funding question about it being upfront. So for recovery housing, part of that match funding will come from rent, which is only paid monthly. So I couldn't put it. Is that a problem?
No, we're not saying you have to give us the dollars up front. We're saying that you need to tell us what that match dollar amount is. Yes, yes.
Other questions in the room?
This
Other
is Jackie
questions
Price
online?
at South Community. I heard Kimberly say earlier that when clients are enrolled in GOSH, we must provide proof that they have applied for Medicaid. And so, as many of you know, at South Community, we have immediate access. So clients are able to walk in and start their road to recovery when they're ready. And it's beneficial, you know, for us to be able to provide that service immediately, of giving them providing a diagnostic assessment and linking them to treatment. So many times, you know, folks do have what they need when they walk in terms of documentation. Other times, because we do take walk-ins, they may not have that information. So while we do assist clients and we have a very strong record of linking clients with Medicaid, that likely won't be able to happen same day. And so just wanted to understand from ADAMHS' perspective, how we can maintain our access and our readiness and ability to link clients immediately with treatment, and still, you know, provide what you're needing. And just, you know, thinking about some of the allowances on your Form 103B, and just, again, trying to understand how we can make sense of that.
Hey, Jackie, good morning. Great question. It sounds like you're saying two things though, because I was talking about a Medicaid enrollment just to show that the individual had applied for Medicaid. You're also mentioning some of the other documentation that's required with the Form 100. So could you please clarify what you're asking?
Sure. So I thought I understood you to say that when we enroll a client in GOSH, we have to have proof that they have applied for Medicaid. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
So for immediate access, a client walks in, and if they've not yet applied for Medicaid, we still provide a diagnostic assessment. Then we, you know, link them with the services that are appropriate, begin providing treatment, continue that process with them of linkage to Medicaid. But if that person, so for one, when they come in and they have the diagnostic assessment, we may not be able to provide proof day one that they applied for Medicaid if that hasn't happened yet. Then as we link them with a treatment provider and we assist them with the process of applying for Medicaid, we would be able to provide the documentation at that point. But at that point, we likely would have already enrolled them in GOSH. Then if that person doesn't return within the first several days, that's where it goes to the allowances that you have on Form 103B. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. I think we can take this offline because you guys do have immediate access. I would say that we do historically want to be able to support those assessments that occur through immediate access. So if we could take this offline, then we could talk through that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Katie, I'll get back to you, I promise.
Some of our other providers might have that same question, so we need to put that one onto our FAQ to explain presumptive eligibility for those that may not have an awareness about it and how it operates under state law and reimbursement.
Katie from We Care Arts just needs a little clarification. She feels like she's hearing both yes and no to the same question. So her clarification is yes, the match is on an annual basis, not monthly, but it has to be guaranteed upfront in January.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Katie. Yes is the answer to that question.
Can
Or the
she
clarification.
clarify her question about guaranteeing upfront?
Katie, do you want to come on off mute?
Did that work?
There you go, Katie. Go ahead.
Hi, so this is specifically related to our grants, right? So how we come up with that 25%, we know that we're going to budget for X amount of grants, right? But for example, there are several grants this year, and I'm sure I'm not alone, that we applied for it in February or March, but we're still waiting to hear due to the grant funders' own personal structures. So if we included that in our 25%, we would still be waiting at the end of September to be able to say that that's there. So what I'm hearing is that you said, yes, that guarantee needs to be on an annual basis, so we can come up with that, but that in January, it has to be guaranteed funds. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does. Waiting for February, March, or mid 2025 grant receipts to be confirmed to receive those notices of award is a bit too late for this process. We would need that confirmed match prior to awarding that contract. So if you have something that is pending where that revenue will start coming in and you'll have that notice of award prior to 2025, then we can guarantee that you're able to match it. But once we start getting into the end of the first quarter, mid next year, then there's no way for you to guarantee that match.
Okay, so Christy, so so basically, when we're putting our budget together and we are assigning what the 25% match will be, it really cannot be other grant funds, like, for example, the Mateel Foundation, or the Levin Family Foundation, or any of those, because they have their own timelines, right? I don't run that, ADAMHS doesn't run that. So really, it has to be, for example, for us, we have our DODD contract. Now that is funding for artworks. It's for specific individuals. But it's reliable. Does that count towards matching, because that supports our entire artworks program? Because not being able to rely on grants, at least for us as a nonprofit, as part of that 25%, and having that all known money in January makes it difficult.
So the match requirement is program specific. So I want to clarify that. And the dollars that you match, they have to be applicable to that program, to that specific program.
Okay.
We would need to know what that match is, that confirmed match is, prior to awarding your contract. So that's not January. We're taking those contracts to our board in December. So if you don't have the guarantee of that match prior to December, notating that in your application before the due date that it's pending and you should be receiving that NOA before the end of the year, then that will have an impact on our ability to fund, because we are requiring that per program.
Okay, so not grant funds. Okay, thank you.
Real quick, because I want to make sure that this is clear. So first off, you can use grant funds, but if you're not going to find out until after December, then no. But I do want to just mention, like George had mentioned, that he has a source of funding that's pretty stable, but just won't have it all at the beginning of the year. That's also okay. If you have money coming in throughout the year, that's fine. If this is grant reliant, then, and you're waiting to hear on another grant, then we would need to know by December.
What if we're willing to take that risk, Tristan? Of like, my question going off of Katie, what, as an agency, what if we're willing to take the risk of saying, we've got these pending grants, and if these things fall through, we're going to pick up the tab and we're going to make sure we get you your 25% match, but we're listing these grants because grants are how most of us make a good amount of money for our programs.
So if you're able to do it through, like, if you're able to match, so I get what you're saying. So you're saying, you're waiting on some grants, but worst case scenario, you go to your donors and you do some fundraising. You would just list that in your application to say, we're waiting to hear from these. And also we have donors that are willing to subsidize these costs. That's fine.
If not awarded, here's the plan made to cover.
Yep.
Yes, and in that document, the annual budget detail, we are asking for the sources of those matches. So there's multiple lines that you could put there as well, and fundraising could be one of them.
So we raised a lot of money through individual donors and fundraising. How do we prove that? Would it work if we give you like an average of revenue from individual donors for the past 3 years to show you that on average we exceed the 25 match? I mean, if it's 75 individual donors, I'm just not sure how I'd prove that. I mean, I can show you historically what we're garnering each month or each year.
I think that's going above and beyond, and that's good to have if you would like to provide that. But on the monthly and both, even the annual template, we're asking for the sources, the amount, the total cost of the program. So we would need to understand the total cost of the program, what part is funded by ADAMHS, and what part is funded by the external source.
I guess what I'm asking, how do I prove that I'm going to fundraise individual donors next year that's going to supplement my 25%? How can I prove that?
That is a good question. That we'll work through. That's a good question. Thank you.
I guess the biggest question for us is we're all sitting here trying to figure out, how do you want us to show you that we have the money? Do you want a narrative? Do you want documentation? Do you want a board signed signature from our board that says we're guaranteeing your 25% match based on $60,000 that we're requesting? This is the 25%.
Yes. I understand that. So we can do that. We can provide an additional documentation to provide that is signed off by your board stating that, okay, repeat. Thank you, Sasha. So we received the question of how are we verifying that someone is actually matching? Okay, thank you for that. Part of that really is telling us and proving what your total budget is, line by line. Those budgets are very detailed. They're itemized per personnel, per supplies, per all of that. When you guys are invoicing us monthly, you should be including supporting documentation for payment of those expenditures. With your invoices, you're asking us to cover only a portion of those total expenditures, which means the remainder of that cost is covered elsewhere. The main thing that we're asking is that we're not covering 100% of that total cost. Whatever you can provide to say, oh, and we funded elsewhere, that's wonderful. But we're just asking that you're only asking from us to fund 75% of your total expenditures. But I'm happy to add an additional documentation to make sure that your board is certifying that, yes, 25% of this total program cost is coming outside of ADAMHS.
Okay, back to Zoom. Do we still need to provide proof of application to Medicaid if they would not qualify, but still qualify for sliding scale?
Yes.
Would the match requirement apply to other government entities?
Yes.
Yes. We would use fundraising dollars to match program expenses. Of course, those dollars come through the year. That is okay, correct? We don't need to literally have those dollars pre-contract.
Correct.
Correct. That is correct. Okay, I think we've got one more.
I know we're having a lot of questions about the match, but again, to reiterate, we want to ensure that we're only covering 75% of a program cost, and we would need to see the total program cost. You will need to justify what the total program cost is.
my list of questions is growing now. So you've made it very clear this is a cash match. And so my question is, let's say the number of times you all have said collaboration today has been tons. So let's say because of my relationships and my collaboration, the campsite that normally would cost me $5,000, they donated to us. That doesn't matter in this match. Is that correct? That would be an in-kind
That's an
donation.
in-kind. So we specifically took in-kind matches out because of the difficulty in documenting that for two reasons. The difficulty of being able to verify that that was happening, especially on our invoices, and that this is a diversifying of funding effort.
Okay, so we're not including in-kind in a diversifying of funding world.
Not for this, not for ADAMHS.
Okay. When you say, Tristan, when you say unit rate for a school-based program, is that really a cycle cost? Like a full cycle, or is it per kid?
It's gonna be whatever you can do it per school building, per district, per student, per classroom. So this is just whatever you need to serve whatever you apply for. In your case, I'm guessing students. So let's say one of our schools wants to allocate a certain amount of their budget for 100 students to be served by your program. What I'm looking for is what is it going to cost to serve those 100 students or per student? If you're serving them all year, then you would include that. If it's just per cycle, you have a curriculum that has so many sessions, then that's what you would include in that.
So we define unit essentially however we think unit best fits our program.
Yeah, because there's no way for me to standardize this among all of you.
Okay, and then what I'm hoping is an easy question. The last one on my list. We've talked to several schools in the last 2 weeks who were like, we don't know who normally gets the form to fill out about the programs. Can we be given the list of who in each of our schools is going to receive that? And then also, can we just receive the list of which schools are going to receive it in general? I know a lot of our charter schools are really concerned that they're not going to be included.
So a lot of the charter schools are in it. I will say a lot of the charter parochials are in this. I'm happy to provide the list. That's fine. If you have a school that you want to serve that isn't on the list, it has to be applied for through community-based, or you can apply through school-based, but you have to consider that cost in your unit rate. But I will say everything is going directly to superintendents. Superintendents can assign a designee. A lot of times that's the individuals that you all work with in the schools. I'm happy to provide that information. You're welcome. Okay.
We will continue to take questions and put them on the Q&A now.
Oh.
So I think that means we're coming up on time for our session today. However, I want to say thank you to all of you because your questions are helping to make this process clearer. And I know right now some of the match piece, because it's new, feels clear as mud. But please continue to bring your specific questions to us so that we can make sure that everybody walks away with a full understanding. I know you understand the why. The process piece is going to be a little more challenging just because of the differences and the nuances within your delivery of services. So stay with us on this. Questions will go on to our site so that, and it's important. If you have a question, consider that somebody else has that question as well. So please don't hesitate to ask them so that as you go through the process, you're clearly able to put your submissions together. So thanks for being here. Thanks for your patience. Sorry to those of you who are online because you get to leave. You can actually leave the video. This group is not leaving this room without taking a donut with them. So thanks everybody for your patience today.